What's the number one challenge in the trades, in restoration, plumbing, HVAC, that you see service businesses struggling with today?
The number one answer I get is hiring and retaining talent. But that is a symptom of a bigger problem.
You've got maybe one of the best ways out there of getting Google reviews. How strongly do reviews influence local search rankings in your experience?
The only way for Google to really tell that a company is relevant and doing business is if they've got reviews and recent reviews.
The importance of price versus trust. How are you going to see that shifting over the next 10 years?
Everyone's talking about AI right now. And AI is going to be pervasive in everything. And we already are looking at images on the internet saying, is that real?
Yeah.
And AI is going to have a lot of benefits medically and technologically, but it's going to erode trust.
Hey everybody, Jeff Jones here with the Violand GPS podcast. We thank you for listening. And during these sessions, we love to meet with people in the trades and talk about lessons that they have learned along the way in building their business, what's worked for them, some of the mistakes they've made, what they wish they could have done better, and what they can teach people who are listening in the audience. And we are absolutely thrilled to have Mr. Ed Marchicelli here, who is the owner and founder of The Seal, and we'll get into here in a second what that is, but he was also very successful in the trades, and he is an expert when it comes to competing on things other than price. And hopefully that is music to your ears, because that is money in your pocket. And so we're going to get into building a strong reputation and getting Google reviews, what to do when that goes wrong, and building a team on the job site that you can be absolutely proud of, because that's the world that he lives in. And I guarantee you are going to love this one. You're going to get a ton out of it. So Ed, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
Happy to be here, Jeff. Looking forward to it.
You are the man. We are thrilled. And I want to tell this real quick. I go to a lot of trade shows, and I always hear people come up to me and they'll say, like, you got to meet so-and-so, or you got to go see this product or this service. And it happens once. You're like, yeah, okay, sure. And it happens a second time. You start to think about it. When you start hearing 3, 4, 5, 6 different people coming up and telling you, you got to go see this, you got to talk to this guy. That is how I first found out about you, Ed. So that is the buzz that you are creating in the trades right now. That's really impressive.
It's great to hear. Thank you.
Tell us real quick, just going into the background, why people should care about what it is that you have to say.
Oh, sure. So, early in my career, I was in high tech for quite a while and sold software, and I sold ERP and CRM most recently before I got into the trades for Microsoft. And I found myself within Microsoft running the field service vertical, which is service companies. So I started getting really in-depth in service companies, and actually met one of our customers I just really hit it off well with, and it was a small air conditioning, plumbing, electrical company. And they just were like, it was a great company, but in the dark ages as far as, technology. So we ended up helping them with software and services. And then I kind of was personally invested in their success, and I ended up investing in the company, and eventually decided that I enjoyed that more than my big corporate job, and sure. left my corporate job and found myself running a home service company. And I exited there in about 20 years ago with 165 employees, which was a lot of employees 20 years ago for a home service company that didn't do any new construction. And then I had the idea for the Seal while I was there. And so I started almost immediately working on the Seal and launched that 2 years later.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into the Seal and what you guys do here in a little bit, but it is a great way for creating trust and getting Google reviews on the job sites, and you've got something that's extremely innovative. So we'll let people sit on the edge of their seat here for a minute and before they can get all of that. But you've been in the trades now for quite a while. You talk with business owners every single day. What are you seeing right now? What's the number one challenge in the trades and restoration, plumbing, HVAC that you see service businesses struggling with today?
Well, if and I say if I do ask, and the number one answer I get is hiring and retaining talent. But that is a symptom of a bigger problem. And I can
Okay.
see it across, we have over 600 clients, and I see clients in the same business, in the same market with the same products not having those problems. And that problem with hiring and retaining often comes down to not being able to sell their services at a margin that allows them to pay their people better than everyone else, to have a great culture where they do team building exercises and that sort of thing. It comes down to money. So a lot of them are struggling against their low price competitors. They're giving into that. They're lowering their margins, and now they're all of a sudden not able to pay their people as well as they'd like to. They're not able to do things they'd like to, to help build the team and that sort of thing. So if you ask the business owners, they'll tell you staff, hiring, retaining, but it's really a function of not being able to get the type of margins you need and pay people the way you'd like to.
Yeah, I think the low barrier of entry to start a lot of these trades where you don't have to have a brick and mortar, you don't have to have, a ton of overhead that goes into it, and a lot of them just are not strong business people. They're good technicians that want to work for themselves, and they don't know how to sell. They don't know how to build reputation, and really all they know how to do is undercut the competition.
Yeah, we work with some very successful franchises, and they have the best equipment, the best products, the best training, and and a lot of them make it. But I just invariably you see the ones that fail. It's always they can't compete, they can't sell, and there's always somebody that can live on less money than you.
That's a
So
good way to put that.
you just do not want to go down that rabbit hole of competing on price and trying to compete with that person.
So help me with this one. If I have, let's say I have my garage door breaks. That's not something that happens very often. And so I don't have a garage door guy on retainer by any stretch. I'm going to open up Google or wherever I'm going to go, and I'm going to get a couple bids. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to go with the lowest bidder because I don't have tons of money lying around to spend on a garage door that worked yesterday doesn't work today. So if you have a lot of customers saying I'm going with the lowest bidder, how's that happen? Is that just a straight they don't know any better? Is that an education? Is that fear?
I always told my team, if somebody is shopping us on price, they either don't value what we do or they don't see a difference between us and our competitors. Now, when it comes to a garage door, it may be a certain brand of garage door and opener. And so you think I'm getting the same garage door and opener. And unless that installer does something to differentiate beyond that product, I was in the air conditioning business. We sold Carrier and Train. We were competing against other dealers. We couldn't lead with Train, or Carrier because we would compete with them. So you have to differentiate yourself in a way that's meaningful and verifiable. So if you can differentiate on the product, great. If you can't, then you start looking at process. Is it something with business process? Obviously, you want to start building a relationship because people buy from people they like and trust. Warranties, that sort of thing. Are you going? Is the company going to be there a year from now if you have a problem? There's so many different things that you can differentiate on. And one of my favorite sayings is buyers are liars. So buyers, they will tell you they're shopping on price, and they sometimes they are price shoppers. But I am not a price shopper. I'm a value shopper. But I
Mm-hmm.
will never admit that to a salesperson. I will often tell them, I'm going to be selling the house in next year, and I'm going to go with the lowest bid because I want that person's best price. If I tell them, I think you have the best product, the best service, or really like your sales pitch, and I want to go with you, then I might be paying more than I need to. So a lot of times people will tell you they're going with the lowest price. Sometimes they mean it. Oftentimes they don't, and they're just value shoppers. My other favorite saying is, "It's all about money until you make it about something else."
Hmm.
So when your garage door breaks, you're thinking, "I want a garage door that works." Well, if that person comes out and just gives you a number on a new garage door, you're going to default to price. But what if you start offering them different options in the door, or the opener, or the warranty, or maybe the relationship that you build, or start talking about who's going to come out to your house to install it, because the wife is going to be home alone when the door gets installed. So there's so many different ways to differentiate, and that's immediately, and do not just discount that customer and believe them and walk away, because you're leaving money on the table if you do.
So if I'm sitting here and I get a phone call and it's a customer and they're saying, "Hey, I need a plumber to come out and unclog a drain. Just tell me your price. I care about price." You're
Yeah.
saying don't hang up the phone because this is a
No.
bad consumer. So how do I go from, well, Mr. and Mrs. Consumer, I understand you're leading with that, but I want to twist the conversation a little bit. I want to go in a different direction with that. How do you do that? Or how does somebody who's not in sales be
Yeah,
able to do that?
I would start with questions. Instead of just saying no, just say, so what is clogged? They're obviously not going to know. How far down is the clog? All these things that they don't know, and eventually you start building this trust and relationship, and just say, well, I just, without knowing those things, anyone that gives you a price over the phone is either being dishonest with you, or you know just they don't know what they're going to charge you, and they're going to charge more when they come out there. I'm going to be upfront with you. We're going to come out. We're going to diagnose the problem, and we're going to fix it for you. We're not just if I give you a set price, and then that clog is worse than I think it is. What do you think the company that gave you that price is going to do? They're not going to go all the way through and make sure that's done correctly, because they're locked into a price. We're
Hmm.
going to fix your problem.
So you're saying move into more of a consultative type approach, ask open-ended questions, start to develop a little bit of rapport with the goal of getting a foot in the door.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Once
then
they
see that.
trust you. So, if you think about it, it's universal. Whenever anyone needs a service, their garage door breaks, their air breaks,
Yeah.
their plumbing clogs, the first thing they think about is, who do I know? Because we all want someone we know and trust. And so as soon as we don't know somebody we know, well, so sometimes we say, who do I know who knows somebody? But when we can't find that, then we go to Google, right? Or
Mhm.
wherever we go. And we're nervous. There's anxiety around that. Like, I don't know nothing about these people. So we really just want to start building trust as early as possible. And that trust starts with the Google reviews and what people say about you, the way you answer the phone, how you handle the customer on the phone. And you want to start building trust immediately, because when they trust you, when they shopping on price, that is a lack of trust. They
Mhm.
just don't know who to trust. So why not default to price?
Yeah. And today everything's expensive. We
Yes.
all go to the grocery store. We all fill up at the gas tank. It's not as easy to have cash laying around, especially if you got kids. So are there types of jobs or markets where you see price sensitivity is higher than others? Other industries where that matters? Or is there some where it's not as big of a deal?
Yeah, I think anytime it's very the sale is product focused, is more difficult, because you can't focus on that product. So then you have to focus on installation, service after the sale, longevity, relationship, sense of community, all that sort of thing, and anything that's not an emotional sale. And you can turn something that's not an emotional sale into an emotional sale. If you're selling air conditioning, you're not selling tons and how much air you're moving. You're selling comfort, and you're talking to the customer about humidity and how you want them to be comfortable. And it's not just about cooling the space. And you talk about where the windows are in the house and which way the house is facing. Somebody comes in and just bids an air conditioner and says, "Oh, you need a 4-ton, and here's your price." And you start talking about where their windows are and where the heat gain is and the sun's coming in. And if you cool the house off too quickly, the humidity is still too high. So even though it's 72 degrees in there, you're still not going to be comfortable. And all of a sudden you make this equipment sale something that's more emotional. Like, I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to
Hmm.
feel better. I'm going to be more comfortable.
I think that's something a lot of people have to understand is you don't sell the product, you sell the experience.
Absolutely.
People buy on emotion. And when you can get them emotionally connected with a feeling that makes them comfortable, now you have their attention. Otherwise they're scared. You're a
Absolutely.
stranger who's trying to take their money.
Yeah, and I think fear is the most common human emotion. It's the most motivating human emotion, and I would argue that trust is simply lack of fear, right?
Hmm.
So many decisions are based on fear, trying to avoid something going wrong, and I think we're so fear based, and that it's unfortunately everything we watch on TV knows that. So that's why
We've all
everything,
watched the
no
news.
matter what you see, everything is, fear on what's going to happen if the other side gets what they want. So they just know that that human emotion is so powerful.
So earlier you mentioned don't sell on price. You talked about things like guarantees and warranties and stuff like that. But if you pick up the phone and call me right now and try and sell me an extended warranty on my car, or if I'm at Best Buy and I'm buying a video game for my kid and they try and sell me a 3-year warranty, you're wasting my time. Now you're just making this experience worse for me. How do you do that professionally? How do you be able to sell off guarantees and extended warranties and things like that when a lot of people have a negative connotation towards them?
Sure, sure. And it depends on the service. So, when you're talking about buying a computer, um, when you're selling, it's a lot easier in the repair, like air conditioning or plumbing repair, because a lot of times you give people a discount on that repair for signing up for a service plan. So it's like here's our list price, and we can give you our service plan price today if you sign up for it. So that's a little bit easier. It's a little tougher when you're selling a computer at Best Buy and that sort of thing. But again, it comes down to trust. And oftentimes, if you don't trust the person telling you about the extended warranty, it's just an extended warranty. But if that person during that process has been knowledgeable and had a consultative sale and understands, and they might actually by asking you questions on how you're going to use it and how long you plan on having it and that sort of thing, then it starts to make it a lot easier to present that service plan in a way that matches that customer's needs and not just, hey, I can't tell you how many times I bought a computer at Best Buy and they're like, hey, the manager, if I don't ask you, to buy a service plan, I'll lose my job. So,
Yeah.
and you say, oh, sorry, but no, I don't need it. And they just move on, and it's just like it's a required thing that they have to ask, and they just ask it and then move on. And they haven't set the stage for that at all.
Yeah, I know some of those positions, they don't get paid commission, but they get paid a bonus on every extended warranty
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
sell.
yep.
So, okay, if you're let's put this one back to, let's say you're HVAC and I need a new HVAC unit and I've called you and somebody else and that other person is cheaper and they're not $20 cheaper. They're cheaper to where
Okay.
it is I have to justify it. And you ask for the order at the end and I say, I'm sorry, I'm going to go with the other guy. He's $400 cheaper.
Yep.
Uh, where do you go with that?
So, hopefully you've built the value, you've basically handled the call well. In our case, we send an image of the person's badge of who's coming and we start building that trust. They get a bio and a video bio of the person. So they're kind of personally invested in that person and you do
Mhm,
everything right. But then you get down to that point and the customer says, hey, they're $400 cheaper.
mhm.
Um, First of all, they may not be telling you the truth, so you always have to understand that might just be a tactic, but they might be telling you the truth. But one of the things that I always tell people is you don't want to pull up to a sales call and King Ranch F-250, brand new $100,000 truck, and then tell people our margins aren't that high. Uh, so you want to pull up in a clean vehicle, nicely dressed, and not
Mhm.
not be and leave your Rolex at home and all that good stuff. But one of the things that I would tell people, and if you establish that relationship, is Mrs. Jones, we run a profitable business, but we're not getting rich. If I was, I'd rather be playing golf than doing this.
Mhm.
Um, and we buy, we're one of the bigger players in town, so we buy everything right. And I can't sell it for that amount and keep the lights on and do everything I need to do. So I can't tell you what corners are being cut. I would have to cut corners in order to give you that price. I can't tell you what those corners are, but I'm not willing to cut corners. You look at my reputation, you look at my reviews. I've got happy customers. I've been doing this a long time, and I plan on doing it for a long time. And I'm not going to talk bad about. I don't know what that company's infrastructure is like, what they do, and how they do things, but I can't do it for that price without cutting corners, and I'm not willing to do that. So then they start thinking, oh God, what corners is this person going to cut, to be $400 less? I always love that one. It's like, I can't tell you what corners they're cutting to get that price, but you know, your
Is
guess is
there
as good as mine.
is there a way that you can work with the plumber, the technician, the whoever, the installer, where they could have that type of a conversation without, and the way you're wording it comes across as genuine, but sometimes that can come across as arrogant.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of skills or any kind of training or recommendations you can give to how can you have that as a real conversation that connects with somebody?
Well, the guys at Super Tech University.
Yeah,
I,
Eric and
I
Larry are
love
great.
those
Love
guys.
them. They're
So
very
the
good.
soft skill training, and that is so important. And
Mhm.
um, soft skills. What we're talking about is soft skills. How you delicately manage that with the customer. So, and that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with. Technicians struggle with it. Technicians don't want to sell. They want to be tech. They just want to repair, but they want money. They want the money like they sell. So, I love those guys. I recommend them all the time. And those are really soft skills. And they do the disc training where it's important to understand what personality customer you're talking to, because you can get away with that with some customers and others you can't. So when they have just some basic disc training and they understand which type of personality they're talking to, they can navigate on how to handle that person's objection. And the way you handle it with one personality might be totally different from another.
Oh, without a doubt. That's a key piece of understanding and mirroring the person who's across from you. But empathy always scores well, regardless of who you're talking to, and not being sleazy. And
Yeah.
I would think most people aren't, but when you do come across with that arrogance of, well, that person's just ripping, you tear the other person apart and talk about how great you are just stabbing yourself in the back over and over.
Yeah, and it would drive me nuts when I have technicians or salespeople say the customer was cheap. That customer's cheap, and they especially if they had like $150,000 car in their garage. They say that guy has a $150,000 whatever car, and he's beating me up over $1,000 or
Mhm.
$500. And I said, and you talk about empathy. I said you have to understand this customer. I said, and and everyone's different. People with money, they can afford the $400 or the $2,000. They just don't want to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And so people in beautiful homes in beautiful neighborhoods that have nice cars, they are just expecting to be charged more because of that. And so sometimes why they'll go with the lower price, because they think it's just getting marked up because they have money. So
Mhm.
you really need to work just as hard with those people and not just assume they're going to be willing to pay that because you're worth it. So handling somebody with money is it's different, but it's no different. It's like the person with no money is afraid to make a wrong decision, which you can actually use that to get the $400, because the person with money can afford to make a wrong decision. They'll just go out 4 years later and buy it again.
Mhm.
The person that this is a big purchase for them, they have to get it right.
Yeah.
And a lot of them would rather spend $400 and get it right than have to go out and do it again a couple years later. So depending on the personality and the financial situation, the person with a lot of money, they don't want to be taken advantage of. That's their biggest fear. Like they don't fear losing $400 or $1,000. They just don't want to be taken advantage of or be charged more because it's obvious they have money.
Yeah, I think people sometimes forget if you're the one who's sucking sewer water in a stranger's basement at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're making, 30, $40 an hour, you're working hard for that money. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But if you live in a house that's much bigger, much more expensive, and you got that nice car, you're also still probably working hard. You're just doing something a little bit different. Your hands might not be getting as dirty, but you still got an awful lot of stress in your life. And it's
Yes.
still time you're spending away from your family and spending away from the golf course. And it isn't necessarily always price, it's value.
Yes.
They buy on value and they buy on feeling appreciated, regardless of the size of the house. that they have. But you're right. The guy with more money can afford to make a mistake. I would compare that to maybe the difference between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the New York Yankees when they're drafting players.
Yes.
Pirates have to get it right. The Yankees can go buy their replacement, but they're still working hard to get that money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always went through an exercise with my technicians and my salespeople too about people. It would be an example of people's budgets at different levels, like a $250,000 income. We would go over what kind of people make $250,000 a year, what kind of people make $500,000 a year, because a technician that has never made more than $50,000, they cannot even comprehend the disposable income that this person has that makes 300,000 or 500,000 or $1 million a year. So we would actually go through this and say, somebody that makes $500,000 a year, these are the types of people. This is what their typical mortgage is. This is what their typical car payment, if they have one, is. There's tuition, all these expenses, and this is what's left over every month. And it's a lot of money, and they can't even comprehend that. So if you can't help them comprehend that, they're, the old problem of I wouldn't pay that. They won't quote something like a high end AC system because they're like, I'd never spend the money on that.
That's a
But
good
they
point.
have
I never
they
really
have
thought
to
of it
be
that
able
way.
to put themselves. It's like similar to empathy, but at
Yeah.
that under putting themselves in that customer's situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point. So one of the things that drew me to the seal and caught my attention was your ability to get Google reviews. Because I know the way that I buy, that comes into play. And I
Yes.
want to see them, and I want to see the bad ones. And I want to see the reaction to the bad ones. And I think you've got maybe one of the best ways out there of getting Google reviews. So let's talk about that. How strongly do reviews influence local search rankings in your experience?
So Google is always changing their algorithm. They will not disclose their algorithm. But the one thing that they have openly admitted over the years is that reviews is the most important thing. And it's a no brainer. And that's the only reason they admit it is because it's obvious. So Google is sitting there out in California, and somebody in Tampa, Florida is looking for a carpet cleaner. Well, they in a split second need to populate several pages, but most importantly the first page of results, and so they have to determine who the good carpet cleaners are, and they want that experience to be good for the customer, because otherwise they'll go somewhere else. So they're looking at the website, they're looking at how close is that company to the person, do they have the right keywords based on what you searched for. But there's a lot of people and companies that put up websites, and you can get a very nice website with all the right keywords very cheaply. And so these people have full-time jobs, and like every once in a while they'll go out and clean a rug, or carpet. So the only way for Google to really tell that a company is relevant and doing business is if they've got reviews and recent reviews. And it's okay even if you have a bad review or two. Like, they'd rather see somebody with 100 reviews with 10 bad ones than they'd see somebody with like their last review was 6 months ago. So that is just, there's no doubt about that. They've openly admitted it, and there's no better way to improve your rankings, organically and in the map and the 3-pack on Google, other than just spending money with them, which is crazy, to buy the links up top. And frankly, most people ignore those links anyway because they know that people just pay for them.
Thank you for listening to Violand's GPS podcast. I hope you're finding valuable insights and practical wisdom to guide you on your journey. Violand's 2025 business planning retreats offer an unparalleled opportunity to drive growth and align your service-based business for success in the coming year. These retreats will be held October 22nd through the 24th in Canton, Ohio, and November 10th through the 12th and 13th through the 15th in Charlotte Harbor, Florida. Create clarity, improve communication, and foster accountability. Receive coaching and guidance to help you develop a customized strategic plan, marketing strategy, and financial pro forma, including KPIs and benchmarks, as you budget and forecast expenses and growth. Explore emerging trends and opportunities that can be leveraged to maximize your business's potential. Don't miss out. Register today at violand.com or use the links provided on the screen or in the description. Now, let's get back to our show. I'll tell you, we're spending less on Google Ads right now than we've ever spent in the last X amount of years.
Yep.
They've lost the significance that they had in the past, but the reviews haven't. And a big change that happened is you used to buy off of people that you liked. You met somebody, you liked the person, you bought off of them. Well, once the internet became available on a phone in your pocket and you had access to 98% of all recorded history, well, trust got a lot easier to figure out. And that comes from those reviews. And I think we're wired to go that direction instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there, you're an expert at this. So is there a recommended process? Is there a script? Is there an easier way to do it for asking for that
Yeah,
review?
so it is a process.
Okay.
And so the first thing to understand is people are more likely to do reviews for people than they are companies.
Hmm.
So companies are evil, right? They're the capitalist, and so, but people connect with people.
Mhm.
So the first thing is building relationships.
Okay.
So that starts before. So the problem with reputation management, you Google reputation management. There's 100 companies out there doing reputation management, and all it is review routing. You ask the customer if they're happy, and you take them somewhere, and you hopefully get a Google review, which is the gold standard, or Facebook, or one of those others. And that's all. That's it. It's like how do we get the customer to leave a review somewhere? That is almost 100% of the market. We believe that it's reputation management is just that. It starts by building that relationship with the technician or the person coming out to the house. So, like with our service, they get the person's badge, they get their bio, they get a video bio. So they start knowing something about this person. They know, where they're from, what church they go to, whatever that person's willing to share. And when they open that door, they feel like they know them, and there's rapport. So, and that helps not only close the sale and compete, but when it comes time to ask for the review, it's equally important. And so we make it feel like the review ultimately goes to the company, but we make the customer feel like they're leaving a review for the person.
Do you,
So go ahead.
so do you recommend? I see some companies that will do this when they've got technicians or somebody who are out in the customer's home, that they want the review to include the employee's name, and then they will bonus the employee when they'll do 3 month long competitions and they'll bonus the employee if their name is mentioned.
That's great. A lot of that is because they can't otherwise track it. So, like when we either email or text the customer and ask them to leave a review, usually integrated with their CRM, it's tracked by everyone who's on that team. And then, especially if they're asking a review from the badge, which is the most effective way, there's tracking. So, the main reason they're doing that is for tracking. The and that's fine. The only problem with that is you get people start asking for certain people. So if Bill's the guy that gets the best reviews, everyone's going to be asking for Bill. And then what happens if Bill leaves, right? So I don't. I understand why they do that, and that's great, and it's fine. It's not as necessary when you actually have the right process and where the customer came from and what technician helped them that got that review. But one of the nice things about it is you can reply to that review too, and people don't realize. People will just say, "Bill did a great job," and the company was great. But that review doesn't say anything about what they bought or what neighborhood they're in or that sort of thing. So, somebody could leave a really generic review saying Bill did a great job, and you could say, "Oh, thanks. Bill has been, a HVAC repair tech with us for so long, and he's really good at his job, and we're glad we can help you repair your, straight cool air conditioner in XYZ neighborhood." And then all of a sudden, you're getting that information into your review that you want in there.
Do you find where a lot of the technicians or whoever it is that's on the job site, they really just are so uncomfortable with asking for the review and you can't get them to do it? Or do you see the flip side of that to where maybe if they are bonused on that they are overly pushy when it comes to that?
Yeah, it's a bell curve. You got
Mm-hmm.
guys that are completely not comfortable asking, and then you've got guys, if you give them, the $5, they'll just go crazy and be too pushy. We like I like the combination. So we've been helping our customers get reviews via email and text for about 12 years, and we have about a 55 to 60% conversion rate on the emails and texts. And then in the last year and a half, we started helping our customers get reviews from the badges. And we went from QR codes, and now we have tap cards. Those went to a 90% plus conversion rate. And we offer, some advice on the best way to get it. So I always tell our clients, before you ask for the review, ask the customer if you provided 5-star level of service. That's the first question. If they say no, you're not done with the job. You've got some work to do. If they say yes, then you just ask them, would you mind taking 10 seconds to leave a review? And when they say yes, that's when you present your badge. And they've already kind of committed and said they'll do it. And so all you have to say is, if you just scan or tap this card with your phone, you can leave me a review on Google in 10 seconds. They've already said they're going to do it. It literally takes 10 seconds. And the key is, unhappy customers will jump through, walk through fire to leave you a review. Happy customers may intend to leave you a review, but then life gets in the way. They're just not as motivated as those unhappy customers. So you do need to ask for it. They're never going to be happier than they are right when that job is complete. You walk away, the phone rings, they get email. If you clean the carpets, and they're nice raked and look great. Well, the kids come home, or you let the dog out and they start running across. It doesn't look that good an hour later.
They forget.
There's never a better time to get that review than we've just completed that job. The customer's happy. You ask for it on the spot, immediate gratification. Here, you can leave one right now and then just go on with your life. You got to make it easy for happy people. So,
Is there value in having the technician offer them a gift card to Applebee's, or a coupon for, if you're doing carpet cleaning, we'll give you $20 off the next time we come back out here if you leave a review? Or does that kind of become bribery? And
I hate it. Yeah,
okay.
I don't like that at all. Then you just start doubting every review you read on that company, and is it because they gave me? If that customer's not a raving fan enough to take 10 seconds to leave you a review, you got a problem. You're just not doing it right. So the fact that you're not only leveraging the job you did, but you built this relationship with them. They're going to give you a review. Once they've committed to giving you that review, and you've told them it'll only take them 10 seconds, the only valid objection really is, I don't have my phone with me. And I've got a client that, knowing that's the only valid objection, he will, when he's done with the job, say, let's walk around the property, it's an exterior cleaner, and bring your phone with you in case you want to take any pictures of anything, so then they'll walk around. So then when they're done with the walk around, he knows that they've got their phone with them. And then he says, did we provide a 5-star level of service? Great. Would you mind taking 10 seconds? When you ask that, you don't pull your card out before you ask for the review. You say, would you mind doing that? And then get their commitment to do it. Mm-hmm. And then you say, if you just scan or tap this, they've already made the commitment to do it. They do it 90+% of the time.
Look at you with procedures on how to get these things effectively. That's impressive, man. It sounds like you've done this a few times.
A few times.
So let's flip it. And Ed's HVAC service, and you come out to my house, and I'm just mad. I'm just a miserable human being. And I am I'm going to let the world know how mad I am, whether it's justified or not. And that's a hard part in the world that we live in, because so many of these companies are service-based. Yes, there's some product, but for the most part, it's the service that's getting reviewed. And so that's subjective. How do you handle negative or unfair reviews when you get them?
So you answer them, carefully, and you bury them with good reviews. Now, if I'm looking for a product or service, the first thing I do is look at reviews, and I start with the negative ones. And the negative reviews are not a deal killer for me, because I know people are crazy. But you can tell by reading a review most of the time if the person's crazy or not. And then if they're not, you can look at the response from the company, and see how they responded to it. And it's amazing how poorly some of them will respond to it, so most of the people that you describe that are just angry at the world, you can just tell with the review that they're angry with the world. And you just put a very nice response in. I'm very sorry that we were not able to meet your needs. We strive to do the best and this and that, and move on. And if that's the only review that you've got, or your last review, the very most recent, that's a problem. But when you've got a steady flow of 5-star reviews coming in, it's not a problem. You cannot get Google unless you can prove that person worked for you, or if they've made a racist comment or something in the review. Google is not going to remove that review. So you just live with it and make it a very small portion of your reviews by getting all of those positive ones and responding reasonably with it. A lot of times, we would get complaints. We didn't service window units. Those were considered appliances. We get a 1-star review from somebody that says they don't service window units. What are you going to do? It's like, really?
You're correct.
It's like calling a Ford dealer and wanting a Chevy, a new Chevy, and say, we don't sell those. And so you're going to give the guy a 1-star review for that, but they do it. But it doesn't matter. It matters if it's your only review and it really lowers your score. But if you've got 3,000 reviews and you're still at 4.9, it doesn't matter.
I'd rather buy from the 4.9 than the 5. The 5 doesn't seem legit.
Yep.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you're going to get that bad review. You're going to take it personally, but you got to reply professionally, and then just bury it by getting 20 more good ones.
Yep.
Okay. So let's create some benchmarks.
You might be able to get the customer to change the review also. So if you really did something, if it is somehow your fault and you rectify it, you just let the customer know, hey, I know we messed up, but more importantly, it's how we handled it. And, people aren't going to see that, reflected. And you could just, and you don't, you just suggest it. Like, we'd appreciate it if you update it, but if they don't, they don't.
If they don't, yeah. Then you just could be opening up a whole new can of crazy right there.
Yep. Yeah.
So let's give people some targets to shoot for. I just start my my restoration business, and I got to get reviews because nobody knows who I am. What is a reasonable amount of reviews I think I can probably get maybe in the first 6 months or in the first 12 months?
The smaller the company, especially owner operated, but even if, so it's a new company, first 6 months, the easier it is. I mean, it's harder for the bigger companies. They don't have as much control. The quality control is tougher. They got different personalities. They're not able to know if the person's asking every time. When you're owner operator or 1 or 2 employees, you ought to be at 90% plus. So I don't know how, it just depends. I don't want to throw a number out there because it depends how many jobs they're doing, but they ought to be at 90%. It really should be.
Okay. So that's what we're going to give people as the target is, regardless of who you are, 90% of your job should end with a Google review.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing customers that just like are integrated, like bigger customers. We have clients with 700 employees, and it's integrated with their Service Titan. And when they click job complete, they get an email and text, and they just can't get control over those 700 employees to all ask for reviews. It just doesn't work as well. They're at 50, 55, 60%, conversion rate. When we went to the badges, we're that the companies that use it are over 90%. And the guys that are owner operators are 1 or 2. I mean, there's no reason you should be less than 90%.
So we started talking about price and how to land jobs without using cost cutting and price reduction and building that rapport, finding the right product and service for the customer. And we went into the Google review, which is demonstrating trust on the back end to the next customer. But in between that, then is the actual job itself. And you talked about people don't review companies, they review people. And I'll flip it and say people don't buy from companies, people buy from people. And people buy from people they trust. And They're going to give 5-star reviews to people who they trust. So if that's the case, I bring on a technician. That technician may not be skilled in soft skills. but they're really skilled at getting their hands dirty. So that's why I need them.
Yep.
So, what are some techniques I can do when I bring a new team member on board, or even if I have a subcontractor going out there? So they're still representing my company. How do I get them to start building that trust and embody the type of experience that I'm looking for that customer?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with hiring, right? Right, but it's hard to turn down that technician that knows their job backwards and forwards, even when they don't have a great personality. But I always recommend in the interview process having multiple people talk to them, because anyone can have one good interview, and then especially if you let them run their game on the interview, they come in with what they want to say and what they want to tell you, unless you make them uncomfortable or ask them two or three questions deep, you're not really doing an interview. But once you get that person on board, I think especially the technical skills are there. You always need to build and hone those. But those personal skills, that's I hate to bring them up again, but the guys at Super Tech University love what they do. So if you can't do it yourself, hire someone to do it. But if you don't know DISC and not able to help this person with handling different personalities. You talked about the person that's mad at the world. We were at a restaurant with my sister and brother-in-law. It was a while back, but the waiter just came up with the worst attitude, and my brother-in-law immediately wanted to have an attitude back. And I just said, "Are you having a rough day?" And he just like his shoulders dropped and everything, and he spent like 30 seconds telling him about what a terrible day he had. He was the best waiter from that moment forward.
He
So
wasn't self-aware of where he was at.
yeah, and all I did to say is that you're having a bad day, and so giving those people those skills are so important. And so if you're not the person to do that, there's consultants, there's companies like SuperTech that if you can't do it, get Violand,
Mhm.
coaches, get someone to help you with it because it's super important.
So, with working with as many people as you have and trying to teach people how to build that trust and get these reviews and have a better reputation that's out there, what do you see as a bigger bottleneck for getting these reviews and not having people blast you on social media? Is it price or is it inability to build trust?
I think price is always the inability to build trust. There's a very small percentage of people that will only buy. There are people who lean towards price. Very few that will only buy on price. There's some people that lean towards it, and then the value shoppers. But it is almost always lack of trust or lack of building value. It's almost never price. It goes back to it's always about price until you make it about something else. And they may not know what that something else is. You've got to figure it out.
So if I were to pick up the phone and I'm going to call you right now and I want to pick your brain and I want free advice because I'm that cheap person who's only here on price. So I'm going to ask you to give away a little bit of the secret sauce, not all of it, but a little bit of the secret sauce. But if you were advising somebody in the trades right now, we already know the margins are thin. If they got that giant truck that we talked about earlier, maybe there's some questions with the accountant that we should be
Yep.
having. Margins are thin, work is tough, it's hard to find employees. What are a couple steps you would have them implement in the next 30, 60, 90 days that would be a starting point to get away from competing on price and moving straight into trust?
Yeah. So I would start. I would ask. You started with saying somebody wants free advice or that sort of thing, and that's fine. But I would lead with questions. It's always good to ask people questions. You're going to get the information that's valuable, and then you get them to start realizing, like I'm a do-it-yourselfer guy, So a lot of things I try to do myself, and I can see what they're doing. It's very powerful. Is you see people who put out free videos on how to do something, and they will literally show you every step of how to do it. And by the time you get through it, you're like, wow, that is not something I want to do myself. But they've established themselves as the professional, and they've shown you all those things, and you realize you can't do it. So it's so when it's something like that, that's great. But I think asking the person questions, making them realize that they don't know how to do it, and that's more involved than they realize, because they just oversimplify things. Um, and then I would say, especially if you're new, like 30, 60, 90 days, to move on to that part, what differentiates you? So just sit around the room, like, what makes us better than our competition? And so hopefully you come up with a few. If you don't, you better decide how you're going to be different. So hopefully you come up with at least two or three things that makes you different. And then how do we show that? How do we display that to the customer in a way that's meaningful and verifiable? Though, you know, it's one thing just to say something, but the problem is your competitors are saying it too.
Hmm.
So find something different that differentiates you in a meaningful and verifiable way. So women are the decision makers in the home over 80% of the time, which is why we have the badging credentialing system, why we have, like, one of the most powerful video bios that I saw was a salesperson. And he said, I don't remember his name, just say it was Kurt. He said, "Hi, my name's Kurt. I've worked for XYZ company for 7 years. I specialize in this and that. And I've got a beautiful wife, two beautiful children. I go to such and such church, and I coach my son's soccer team on the weekends." Now, as a woman who's worried about who's coming to the home, how that just deflates the anxiety.
Hmm.
Okay, this guy just said he's got a beautiful wife and two beautiful children. He goes to this church.
Yeah.
So that, from a woman's standpoint, it might be anxiety of who's coming to the home. So there's find out those ways to differentiate, but it's got to be meaningful to the person. So if that's a single man in his 20s, he may not care at all about that. So for him, you've got to find out what his buttons are, and kind of push those. But find out what your differentiators are. If you don't have differentiators, the only option is to compete on price. So find the differentiators. If you don't have enough of them, or even if you do, constantly look for what next is going to differentiate us. And I think a lot of companies might do this now, but at the time, like, our salespeople used to carry portable AC units with them. And in Florida, in summertime, if somebody's air's down and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't get a system in that afternoon. So, we would offer, if you purchase a system, we'll set up the AC in your bedroom tonight so you've got some air. And at the time, that was a unique idea I had, and somebody else might have been doing it, but I've heard other people say they're doing that now. But find differentiators, and leverage them, and don't be afraid to talk about them. And, the reputation. So we talk about the Google reviews and its reputation management. Well, reputation management doesn't start when the job is over and you say, "Hey, please leave me a review." It starts when they go to your website. Is your website professional? Is your truck logoed? Is the person have a uniform and a badge? Do they have the soft skills that when they come into your house, they know how to act in front of your home? These guys, they grew up single parent, maybe, didn't go to college. They've never made more than $40,000 in their lives, and they're walking into a $6 million home. Knowing how to communicate on a basic level with that person, is super important. So the reputation starts. How do you answer the phone? I don't like to do business with anyone that doesn't answer their phone. So if I have a service that I need, and it's not somewhere where I know of a good company, where I already am going somewhere, and I'll look on Google, and I'll call a company. If they don't answer the phone, I just move to the next company. And literally, the first one that answers the phone, it's up to them to screw it up at that point. You know,
Mhm.
so it
Much
could
of
just,
business is just showing up, Ed.
yeah, answering the phone, answering it professionally, booking the call, and then not screwing it up when you get there. You got half the battle. I can't tell you how many times, I'll call a business and they'll say hello, and I'll say, "Is this Bill?" Because they'll say Bill on the owner's bill. "Who's this?" You know, that's no way to answer the phone. If you can't answer the phone professionally, hire someone to do it. You can offshore it now even, but answer the phone, and that's half the battle.
There's services out there where you can do it with AI, where you can even customize it to the words that it uses and the accent and all of it. So
Yeah, yeah,
there's no excuse for that phone still ringing. There's no excuse for the owner answering all the phone calls at 2:30 in the morning anymore either. That
yeah.
don't do that. Don't start that.
And
So
it's not even snobby saying if you can't answer your phone, I'm not doing business with you. It's that I don't know if you're going to call me back or not, right?
yeah,
So if I knew you were going to call me back, I'd probably wait, an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours. But there's so many people that don't call you back. You can't rely on just leaving that one message. So you have to keep calling until somebody answers. And
especially if you're in Florida and your HVAC unit broke.
yeah,
So with everything that you've provided here, I think you've established yourself as an expert when it comes to building trust on job sites, selling on things outside of sales, Google reviews, and how to handle that professionally, the importance of soft skills for technicians on job sites. All of that encompasses the seal. So, can you tell people a little bit about what the seal is and how they can contact you?
sure, sure. So we talked about women being the decision makers in the home 80% of the time plus, and the anxiety that they have and reducing that anxiety bubble. So we have two products, the Seal of Security and Confidence, which includes background checks, and a certificate that they passed. And then we've got 5-star impression, because especially in the restoration space, you've got companies who are required to do background checks with a certain company. So we've got the 5-star impression product that does all the same things, but we don't do the background checks. But the person knowing that, so they're able to email and text a badge immediately when they book that call. That will, in some cases, not all, but some, the client won't bother calling anyone else, because they're like, okay, this is a good company. I've got, their badge. If they are inclined to call somebody else and they say, all right, we'll be out there Tuesday, and then crickets, and so some will actually cancel the appointment, say, I don't even, they didn't even think about it before, but now they're like, who's coming? Well, I don't know anything about them, and so the badge coming before the person shows up, them showing with the badge. I always tell them, if you see somebody with a video doorbell, they are security conscious. So when
Mm-hmm.
you ring that doorbell, hold your badge in front of the doorbell. So the bios and the video bios, people do business with people they know and trust. We said, first thing someone thinks about when they have a service, who do I know?
Mm-hmm.
So we help our clients be the ones that they know and trust. So they get the badge in advance. They've got a bio of the tech, so they know things about them personally, whatever they're willing to share. And when they see that video bio and they've heard that person's voice and they've seen their mannerisms, when they ring that doorbell and the person opens the door, the most common feedback our clients get is, where do I know you from, or have we met before? And that's exactly what we want, because
Okay.
they want to do business with the person they know and trust. The badges inherently convey trust, and the bio and the video bio makes them know you. And hearing your voice in advance and seeing the mannerisms makes them, it ticks all the boxes in their subconscious, and they feel like they know you. Higher close rates, higher margins, and then guess what? When it comes time for ask for the review, and they feel like they're leaving a review, they're going. That's where you get the 95% conversion rate on the reviews.
Smart. Smart. That's why so many people said you got to come meet this guy.
Yes.
So we are thrilled, Ed. You're going to be joining us here in a couple weeks, couple months at our annual business planning retreats. I hope that everybody who attends the planning retreats stops by and talks to you and picks your brain on how to get these Google reviews, how to build the trust, because you are clearly an expert at it. If somebody does want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do so?
So our website has a link, get a demo, and you can put some very, like, 5 questions in there, and then you actually get my calendar or someone else's calendar that will, you can schedule a demo. It's a 15-minute demo.
Mm-hmm.
You can email info@theseal.com and just mention that you're interested, and somebody will help you set up a demo. When the cool thing is, when we do a demo for clients, we always show them their sample badge. So we'll grab their logo and we'll
Mm-hmm.
design a badge for them so that they see what their badge is going to look like. And they, always love to see that.
How about we finish with a prediction for you? Where do you see the dynamic on how customers' behavior around buying on price versus understanding trust? The importance of price versus trust. How are you going to see that shifting over the next 10 years?
Everyone's talking about AI right now,
Yeah.
and AI is going to be pervasive in everything. And we already are looking at images on the internet saying, "Is that real?"
Yeah.
And AI is going to have a lot of benefits medically and technologically, but it's going to erode trust, and unfortunately, people are going to be even more wary and less trusting and believing. I feel like that's the future. So, um, I would encourage people. Relationships are king. Relationships with your current customers, relationships with your prospects, relationships with your competitors. It's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So personal, it's really easy now to go to, put your house dimensions into this website, and we'll shoot you a window cleaning quote, or number of windows and all that other stuff. But um, it keep that personal touch and those relationships, and that's going to be key, because people are going to become less trusting with AI because they're not going to know what's real or not.
Technology will change, but people will always be people, and people will always buy from people they trust. So
Yep.
that's why you're the man. We appreciate everything you're doing in the trades and all the companies who are helping out. We appreciate everybody who listened to the session today, and hope you like and subscribe and do all the other stuff that real official podcasters tell you to do when they film these things. So thank you very much for listening. Ed, I'll let you have the final word.
Oh, that's it. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you and Violand, and you guys have a great customer base. And one of the things that I think is super important is for these guys to not only have coaching, but be able to interact with other clients and see how they're doing things. And I always, that's the number one thing I tell people to do is go find somebody outside your market that does what you do, and that's not a direct competitor, that's successful, and find out what they do. And I love the way you guys bring people together, and the information that they get, and them being able to interact with each other too. It's great.
Can't agree anymore. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you soon.